Hey guys, this is probably not the first video that you'd expect me to release in God knows how long at this point. I was initially going to spend this time working on my Lord of the Rings critique. Unfortunately, my internet is down and will be until tomorrow at about 4 o'clock, and so I can't rewatch episode 1 to get footage for part 1, and so I'm not going to do that. You're getting this instead. I'm hoping I could release that sometime around Christmas. Fingers crossed on that. I just don't know. It is like the biggest project that I've made ever, and holy fuck, I'm gonna need to make at least 8 parts. So I'll get that out eventually, hopefully around Christmas, but it's gonna take a minute. The video I'm responding to, the one on Deadpool and Wolverine, I'm a little late to the party. It came out 4 months ago, but you know, I've always made bad decisions. This is not the first time. And I first discovered it a few weeks ago, but I never got around to responding to it because school. And so this is the first time I'm really responding to a video on my channel, and so I want to put down a little groundwork for how this is going to work. This video was released by Vex Electronica, a YouTuber, who allegedly knows things about movies, but after seeing this video, I'm not so sure. The way I'm going to work this is I'm going to show you part of the video, and then I am going to follow up by responding to that part of the video. And it'll usually be refuting it. I'll explain why her point is either nonsensical or redundant, and then move on. I'm going to do this throughout the whole video, and then towards the end, after we've all seen everything, we've seen how egregious it is, I'm going to do sort of like a summary of what we did and why the video is just sad and makes no sense. And I do have to say, for how annoying it is, how wrong she is, it is also funny at times because the video is just so bad. Anyway, let's get started.
Deadpool and Wolverine, congratulations, because you're either a terminal man-child who's so deep into collectibles that they all have smears of your dick cheese on them, or have taken a few hockey pucks to the dome, as this wasn't even a film. It was a whole lot of nostalgia bait with a script built solely off of who Disney could afford for a Dancing with the Stars level cameo and a lot of humor that sounds like this.
Vagina!
So there's not really a whole lot to unpack in this first section. She makes attempts at criticism at a point or two, but she never really bothers to elaborate on them. However, there are a few things I'd like to touch on. I do find it kind of funny that she's making an argumentative piece that starts off by openly insulting the fan base of the people she's trying to convince to think differently. That's not really the best strategy, at least from what I'm aware of anyway. Most of her criticisms are pretty surface level that she elaborates on later on, so I'm not going to get to those right now. However, I do find it funny that she points out that the humor is mostly adolescent and consists primarily of teenage humor, which, yeah, that is true, but, like, it's Deadpool, and supposedly you've seen the other 2 films, so what exactly were you expecting?
Vex, it's a Deadpool film. What did you expect? Just have fun with it. It's not supposed to be serious.
Disgraceful.
If that's your defense for this film, you're doing yourself a disservice as a paying customer and to the decades of great comic book films we've gotten that manage to honor a long-standing fan base while also exploring intimate relationships and the deeper darknesses of society. Just because they jangled enough keys to give you a nerd-rection doesn't mean it's a good movie, and certainly doesn't mean you should abandon your standards, especially given the state that superhero movies have been in the last several years.
Kill Martha! What does that mean?
The structure of this video is very strange at this point because she's trying to refute the sort of defenses that people give for this movie right now before actually establishing the actual criticisms that she wants to make. That she's trying to refute the defenses that people give while also not offering any reason why those defenses wouldn't work at this point in time. It's very strange. She claims that the very same defense that I brought up in my last section isn't valid and you shouldn't abandon your standards because of it. And I find that interesting because I wasn't defending the film, and I don't think most people who use that are defending the film. They're defending the humor. The humor that you say is lazy is the exact same humor that they used in the other two Deadpool films. She also mentions that just because we dangled enough change to give you a nerd erection doesn't mean it's a good movie, and you certainly shouldn't abandon your standards. No one ever said that. I don't think I'm abandoning my standards by liking it, because a lot of the criticisms that you bring up are fundamentally incorrect, or at least don't have the full truth.
What does that mean? Why did you say that name?
Now, I do feel it's necessary to lay out the basic plot premise of Deadpool and Wolverine before I can calmly explain to you why this movie sucks more balls than Ryan Reynolds did to get his $200 million budget. You've been fairly warned, spoilers ahead. Upon acquiring Cable's Time Watch from the last film and reversing the events of Deadpool 2, Wade finds himself in an alternate Earth 10,005. In this timeline, while life is unexciting, it gives him a chance to be around the people he loves. Most importantly, Vanessa, who's alive here but no longer romantically involved with Wade. However, these time-correcting antics aren't completely ignored as the Time Variance Authority, aka the TVA, find Wade and tell him that his original timeline, Earth 10,005, is disintegrating slowly, thanks to the death of the Wolverine back in 2016's Logan, who had acted as an anchor being, meaning they're a being that singularly kept a universe from crumbling based on their existence. Despite all logic, Wade says, screw it, I'm gonna find another Logan to replace the one that died to keep my original timeline from dying. Wade finds another Logan, thankfully, but apparently this is the worst one. A Wolverine who just drinks his days away to try and forget the atrocities he had committed. Fed up with the theatrics paradox of the TVA banishes Wade and Logan to the Void, a place at the end of time containing the remnants of alternate universes that had been pruned by the TVA. Here they encounter Cassandra Nova, Charles Xavier's aborted twin, who was banished there to keep the other timelines thriving. With some cameos, the two decide to confront Cassandra, but things go sideways when Logan instead wants to persuade Cassandra to help them get back to their timeline. She manifests a time ring from Doctor Strange and transports them back. Upon arriving on Earth 10,005, Wade and Logan find that Paradox is using a Time Ripper, a device developed to merge killed timelines as opposed to letting them slowly fade, because he would be bored waiting for them to die otherwise. Seriously. And he plans to use this on Wade's timeline regardless of the permission he might get from his superiors. Cassandra quickly learns this and attempts to take control of the Time Ripper to destroy all timelines as revenge for Paradox trying to kill her. Somehow, with a confusing exposition dump, Wade and Logan...
So unfortunately I had to cut off the last part of that section because of the fact that I had a weird glitch in my recording when I started this, so I'll just cover it the way it's meant to. The last part just says, which conveniently kills both the Time Ripper and Cassandra. The funny thing with this section is, all it's doing is explaining the plot. I honestly don't know how you found a way to mess this up. In this section, she explains that Logan and Deadpool find out about the Time Ripper once they come back from the Void. Except that's not the case. Deadpool finds out that the Time Ripper exists before going to the Void. He finds out actually even before he goes to find Logan. The reason why is because he says that Paradox is going to Old Yeller my fucking universe, which is reasonable. It is at that point that he decides to go through the other timelines to find another Logan. She also explains that Paradox wants to get rid of this timeline because he'd be bored otherwise. Which, if you watch the fucking movie, you know this isn't the case. During what you would probably consider an exposition dump, Deadpool is actually told by Paradox that he's using the Time Ripper as a mercy killer, that he believes that it's not fair, it's not right to just watch this timeline slowly die out over the course of millennia. And so, he takes the initiative to try and prune it with the Time Ripper instead. That's not being bored, that's called thinking you are on the moral right, even if you're not.
stakes. Deadpool 1 and 2, despite having very simplistic plots, understood its audience and thus what direction the films needed to go in order to resonate with them. Deadpool 1 introduced us to Wade Wilson and his transition into Deadpool. He meets the love of his life, Vanessa, and despite having a pretty terrible life otherwise, he finds something worth living for, sacrificing everything he has left to make her happy. Deadpool 2 evolves their relationship. Now years later, they're ready to have children until her life is cut abruptly short. How fatherhood shapes men becomes the overarching theme, with Wade being left on Earth to act as guidance for a wayward child, Russell, and Cable traveling back in time to save his dead daughter. In both films, the themes of love and fatherhood resonate with the traditional male role, and it's why, paired with a lot of crude humor and gay jokes, they were so successful. The themes of love and fatherhood resonate with the traditional male role, and it's why, paired with a lot of crude humor and gay jokes, they were so successful. Deadpool and Wolverine attempts to instill a next step with legacy, having Wade find use for his powers to win back Vanessa, a relationship development that's never adequately clarified, and Varian Wolverine desperately trying to change after he went on a bloodthirsty killing spree that resulted in the deaths of many innocent civilians. A character point in this movie that's severely glossed over. The only problem is that unlike the first two films, there's no stake established. In the first film, it was getting a hold of Ajax in hopes of curing Wade's avocado complexion so that he could be with Vanessa again. And the second is to stop the rise of a powerful villain. Here, it's to stop a guy who doesn't want to spend his life watching a universe die out because it would be boring.
So a lot of this section appears to be her being butthurt that the plot's a little more convoluted and complex than the last two, because, you know, God forbid you actually have to turn your brain on in a movie. She goes through this long-lasting fucking exposition dump of what happened in the first two movies and why they worked, and why Legacy being added in the third one doesn't work, even though it's not very explained well at all. She claims that the plotline with Vanessa leaving Wade and the plotline with Wolverine being distraught after killing all those innocent people is a bad plot point that they don't expand on enough, which I would argue is not the case. Wade's plotline with Vanessa is clearly established. She left him because he doesn't have enough purpose, and she wants to be with someone who actually finds purpose in their life. And with Wolverine, I don't know where she got that notion at all, because it is touched on at various points throughout the film, and it is clear that Wolverine is struggling with this trauma. Just because we don't see any of this happen on screen doesn't mean it doesn't happen, and it doesn't mean that the emotional resonance is kicked any less. She finishes the section by explaining that the stake is not established, that in the first one it was finding Ajax to fix his face, and that in the second one it was to stop the rise of Cable, or to stop Russell at the end from whatever the fuck he was trying to do. The point is that she's trying to say that the plot line in Deadpool and Wolverine doesn't have any stakes, which is obviously false, because she's saying that the stakes are a group of people trying to stop a person who is bored from a universe that is slowly crumbling and just wants to end it sooner so he doesn't have to watch it his whole life, which is severely missing the point. I already discussed how he's not doing this because he's bored, that he's doing this because he feels like he's in the moral high ground by doing so. And even if you don't like this plot point, to say that it doesn't establish any stakes is just wrong. You could dislike a plot point while also admitting that it still establishes stakes. Even if it was what you said, that he is ending this universe because he's bored, that's still a stake. The stake is that the universe is going to fucking end if Wade doesn't do something about it. That is a stake. Regardless of whether you like it or not, that is still a stake, and it will always be a stake.
It means Wade Wilson gets to save a universe.
Do I detect a note of sarcasm?
Are you kidding me? This baby is off the charts.
I know, it's amazing, right? So absolutely original, it's exactly what the genre needed. And it's not improved anymore by the inclusion of Cassandra Nova, who goes from being a hell-bent ruler of the Void to wanting to destroy other timelines because someone tried to kill her. A plot turning point that makes even less sense when the film consistently built her up as a formidable villain, only to have her get toasted by a time machine.
I just want to take a moment to acknowledge how beautifully, terribly that last part was edited. It says, Deadpool really thought were cooking, but the scene looks worse than this, lol. Which is funny because that sentence literally makes no sense. I think that she was trying to say Deadpool thought he were cooking, but even then it would be he was cooking, not he were. So it reads Deadpool thought the were cooking, and it makes no sense. Either you needed to turn that the into a they rather, so it says Deadpool thought they were cooking, or you need to remove the T and have it say Deadpool thought he were cooking, and then turn that were into a was to make the sentence actually make sense. It doesn't break the video or anything, I just find it really funny. A lot of what she actually criticizes in this section is the plot and how it's set up, calling it things like unoriginal and uninspired, and sarcastically presenting as the best thing to ever grace comic book movies. And it's stupid, but I'm not going to touch on it because that's her personal opinion to think that it's boring, and so I'm not going to try and refute it because it's impossible to. It's a dumb opinion, but it's still an opinion, and so I'm not going to bother refuting that. What I am going to refute is her criticism of Cassandra Nova that comes immediately after that. She mentions that Cassandra wants to blow up the timeline because some guy tried to kill her in the past, and she wants revenge. And it's presented as if that's irrational. There's a lot of stories that are built on that exact premise of trying to kill someone because they tried to kill you. I don't see why she's presenting this as an unreasonable plot point. Of course Cassandra wants to kill Paradox because he tried to kill her at one point. Like, what the fuck are you saying? She also goes on to explain that it doesn't make sense that she's presented as a formidable character when being able to get blown up by a time machine in that extremely funny, bad edited clip that the last section finished with that I told you about a second ago. And I already explained why that doesn't work, so let's just keep going.
As a result, the lack of a legitimate villain leaves the film in limbo, with the plot just carrying on as, and then this happened, as opposed to gradually building up all of the components of the narrative to build stakes. Instead, we're given a lot of action sequences that honestly lead us nowhere. Oh, the two get stuck in the void and want to fight? Cool, I guess, but these are two immortal beings. So what's the point when you're not really using this to establish any sort of stakes or develop either character further? You filled screen time, and that's about it. While there's a whole lot of slashing and stabbing and shooting here, the blood appears in one moment and disappears the next within the same scene. Deadpool and Wolverine suits are near immaculate for every fight sequence, save for the one with all of the variant Deadpools, which you can also see in a lot of the promo images. The best part...
Okay, so halfway through the fucking video, you finally actually started making real points. So, she starts off by saying that this film doesn't establish stakes because a lot of the things are just this happening and then this happening. Yeah, a lot of the film is things happening. The way you establish stakes, as you just stated, is by having things happen. You need things to happen in order for the plot to progress. Wow, mind-blowing, right? She also states that there's a lot of fight sequences between Deadpool and Wolverine that honestly don't matter since they're both immortal. Which I think you're missing the point, right? It is true that Deadpool and Wolverine are immortal. With that said, that does not mean that there's no stakes in the fight. I mean, there's no physical stakes. Because yes, it is true that they're not dealing any real damage to each other because they'll just heal. But, with that said, it's not there necessarily as much to develop stakes between, the characters and thinking that any of them will die. It's to develop the characters. By having them fight, you're demonstrating that they don't get along right now. And if they don't get along right now, building that relationship throughout the course of the film is going to be a lot easier. I also find it really funny that you bring up the criticism of that their suits look near immaculate in every fight sequence. Which is true, but I'm not sure why that matters. It's not like their suits do anything besides act as costumes. It's not like they get special abilities from their suits or anything, so I'm not sure why what their suits look like in the beginning of each action sequence matters, especially when it could be easily explained away, at least for Deadpool's suit anyway, by saying that it's self-healing probably, since it's built by the TVA and they have all the tech in the world. And with Wolverine, there are holes in his suit from, when Deadpool was stabbing him earlier in the movie. We don't see exactly what wounds they sustained while they were fighting in the Coexist car, but we can probably assume it was mostly slash wounds. And so this criticism doesn't really work even if it did matter, but it also doesn't, so fuck off.
The best part of the entire movie was probably the opening title sequence set to NSYNC's Bye Bye Bye. And even then, it highlights not only exactly what I just mentioned with the blood splatter, but establishes the main antagonist as wholly incompetent for the sake of Disney attempting to tie this into the larger Marvel Cinematic Universe. The TVA has been watching Wade for years, yet they send regular guys with disappearing wands after him? Wands that they still haven't figured out would be great to harness into, I don't know, bullets to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. It's even more lessened when you learn that the lead up to that opening sequence has Paradox giving Wade a minted suit and adamantium weapons before explaining that he's going to destroy Wade's original timeline. Man, what greatly pointless scenes to inflate the runtime.
So she starts off this section by explaining that the best part of this film is probably the opening scene synced to NSYNC's Bye Bye Bye. Which is true, and that's because that scene is a banger. But then, near immediately after, she backpedals on it. She says that it highlights what she said earlier with the bloodshed, as well as establishing the main antagonist as being wholly incompetent, which obviously is not true. First off, I don't know what the fuck she's talking about with the bloodshed thing, because the blood is very much there. Because Wade doesn't get injured in this scene, only the TVA agents do. And when there's like those extreme long shots of like the dead soldiers on the field, there's very obviously still blood on the ground. So I don't know what she's trying to get at with this, because it just isn't true. And then the thing with Paradox, she says that establishes him as being wholly incompetent because she sends regular guys with disappearing wands to go and fight Wade. Now, first off, we don't even know who the main antagonist is at this point in the movie, so I don't know how he could already be wholly incompetent, because that just makes no sense. And then, of course, the whole thing with the disappearing wands, saying that, they're disappearing because when he stabs them, they're not there anymore. It's almost like they probably dropped them because they just got fucking impaled or killed or mutilated in some way with the bones of fucking Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. So they didn't disappear, they probably just dropped them because they got stabbed. And that's a reasonable thing to do when you get stabbed, because your priority is no longer defeating the person, it's not dying. And then she brings up the part of wands that they have not turned into bullets yet, because that would prevent bloodshed. And yeah, it would, but also the TVA has existed for what seems like a long time, according to their timesheet, which is never fully explained in Loki. But if their prunes work the way they do, and they haven't harnessed them into bullets yet, that's not a plot hole. That's just something they haven't figured out yet, and it's just a thing that happens to be true. If you don't like that the prunes are prunes and not bullets, then that's a problem with Loki, not Deadpool and Wolverine. In fact, if anything, it would be a plot hole if they just magically did turn them into guns, because there was nothing set up before that to suggest that they can do that. And it would actually ruin a lot of the plot points in Loki if they weren't already ruined enough by itself, because that show is ass. But the point is, that's not a plot hole, and it would even be more of a plot hole if those things did happen inexplicably.
With cameos of previous Marvel characters that had films under Fox, because if the Disney budget Fox sucks jokes weren't enough, they think that shoving in the only characters they could afford to get back would do something for the plot. But Vex, it's a love letter. We've got vastly different versions of what a love letter is. Because this is about the equivalent of telling your wife you got her a 20-person bukkake for your wedding anniversary. You honestly can't tell me that they didn't make a straight mockery of Logan's ending for the sake of a comedic opening title sequence. Come on. Or that this movie takes place in 2024 as indicated by the time cards, but Logan takes place in 2029, and when they return back to their main timeline in 2024, that means there's two Logans now in that universe since the Logan variant doesn't go back to his. Deadpool and Wolverine doesn't pay legitimate tribute to. They all act like Wade Wilson and reflect the overarching theme of one's quest for legacy, even if it's to the detriment of what that character had left behind before. The most egregious example of this is with Blade, who wasn't dropped like every other Marvel IP. He got a full trilogy and a TV series, and currently is in a weird gray area for a reboot. Following his film appearances alone, he did have a legacy and left one, as was clearly alluded to in the final scene of 2004's Blade Trinity. So to rewrite a character to fit the motivations of your leads and the overarching movie isn't honoring anything. It's lazy and shows that the 5 people who have an attributed writing credit to this film didn't know what they were doing, and more so, shows that chunks of this script were solely dependent on who they could wrangle in for a cameo. Genuinely, swap out any of these characters and no difference is made, as they contributed nothing to the plot and died in a place that was at the end of time anyway.
Okay, so she starts off this section by explaining that Deadpool and Wolverine is just using cameos from people they can afford. I'm not going to comment too much on what she says regarding those characters because, frankly, I don't care because I haven't seen those movies anyway. So if you guys want to see that, watch a different video because I'm not going to cover that because I don't know the source material well enough. She interrupts her long skew of that, though, to mention how that they totally made a mockery of Logan's ending for the sake of a funny title sequence in the opening scene. So again, shitting on what she already admitted is probably the best scene in the movie, because it shits on Logan somehow. Even if he got taken out of his grave, I don't know how many years later because they don't explain that, he still did those things. Everything he did in that movie still matters. They're not making a mockery of it. They're simply bringing it back because it's funny. It's not making a mockery of anything that happened in that film. It's just a thing that they decided to do as an artistic choice. Another interruption of her long spew of the cameos is that in the time cards it's indicated that it's 2024 even though Logan happened in 2029, and so when they bring everyone back, that there's now 2 Logans. That's true, I'll admit that, but that's not a plot hole. That's just a thing, again, that happens to be true. If it doesn't go addressed in a situation where it should be in future movies, then it would become a plot hole. But as of right now, it's just a thing that's currently true within the state of the universe, and that's not necessarily a problem. It's just a thing, because now that he could be the new anchor being once the other Logan dies, now the universe won't slowly crumble from within. It's just that it's going to take a few years, because it's 5 years later between when this movie ends and when the events of Logan take place. She ends the section on cameos by mentioning that they don't contribute anything to the plot, and so if you replace them with any other characters, they don't matter. And that's not true, because they contribute a lot to the plot, actually. They help Deadpool and Wolverine get back to their original timeline by getting Juggernaut's head. Honestly, X-23 came in pretty clutch in that scene. So I don't know why she's saying that they don't contribute anything to the plot, because the rest of the plot can't happen without these people. So I don't really know what you're saying. She also mentions that it's lessened by the fact that they die in a space that's at the end of time. And it looks like a lot of the characters die at that point, but at the ending of the movie, they're all alive in the Fox universe 10,005, which is actually 1005. I've been saying it like her. That is wrong. It is spelled 1005. That's not 10,005. That is 1005. I will die on that hill. Besides the point, though. What she's saying is that those things don't matter. Going back again to the point that they die at the end of time, which I already stated, they don't. They come back in Deadpool's timeline. If you want to say that's a plot hole, that's fine. But don't be wrong about it. The plot hole is the fact that they visibly get killed on screen and then are alive again at the end of the film. So they're not dead, even if they should be. So if you're going to explain a plot hole, at least get it right.
as confirmed by the Doctor Strange movies and Into the Spider-Verse, take place on Earth 616, also known as the Sacred Timeline. By reversing the events of Deadpool 2, Wade has created an alternate Earth 10,005, which for the sake of confusion we'll call Earth C. In the opening, Wade travels to 616 to join the Avengers. Does this mean that Wade was just timeline hopping after he saved his own? How would he have learned of the Avengers or 616 so quickly, especially given that he says just trying to find the right Wolverine throughout the movie took him 20 years? It raises even more question when we learned that Cable's watch had limited use in the last movie, so how much did he actually get out of it? And on top of that, Logan takes place in 2029, but Deadpool and Wolverine takes place in 2024, where Logan is already dead.
2, 3, 4.
So the first actual criticism she makes in this section regards Deadpool's timeline hopping after the events of Deadpool 2 and how the heck he got into Earth 616. This is actually valid. We never explained this. As far as we're aware, the device that Cable had only lets him travel through time. It does not let him travel through universes. However, that's not what she said. She said that the reason it was bad was because of the fact that there's no way Wade could have known about 616 this early, which is false. His fourth wall breaks indicate that he knows exactly what's happening in the, movie industry inside of Marvel, inside of Fox, as indicated by the opening scene. So there's no reason he wouldn't know about 616 because he knows what's going on in the outside world. If you take issue with that, then you take issue with this character, and I guess that's okay, but that's not the argument you're making. And so to say that he is wrong in this, to say that he shouldn't know what 616 is completely false. The only reason this is an issue is because there's no way he feasibly should have been able to get there through Cable's device. Her next point really aggravates me. She talks about how Logan takes place in 2029, but in, Deadpool and Wolverine's movie, he's already dead in 2024. I've heard this criticism a lot, and it's still just as false as it was the other 27,500 times, because of the fact that Cable's device takes you through time, yes, but so do the pin pads that Deadpool used. He used a pin pad to get to Logan's grave and dig him up, which, if you watch Loki, can take you to any point in space and time. It doesn't just take you through universes, it also lets you go at any point within those universes. It's completely reasonable to assume, based on that information, that he was able to travel to 2029, even though his movie takes place in 2024. Hell, it could have even been later than 2029, based on how decayed Logan's corpse was. It was probably sometime in, the 2040s.
Us to Paradox and his grand plan to use a machine to end it all faster, which honestly doesn't sound completely inefficient, so why wouldn't the TVA be on board with this instead of him having to do it off the books? We can't claim morality as Paradox is given instructions to bring Wade out of one timeline to the sacred timeline, which would imply messing up all the timelines anyways, which Paradox even notes is bad though when pointing out that Wade did that. This then begs the question of how the timelines even work. If Logan was the anchor being in 10,005 and his death jump-started that universe dying, how was that universe surviving before he was born? Universes are already meant to naturally die out, and 10,005s would still take thousands of years, so why bother trying to save it if that's the natural course of things? How many universes are there? If the TVA needs to assign goobers like Paradox to watch a singular one for centuries.
We're going to stop that right there because I just can't take it anymore. She just keeps rehashing the same point over and over and over again, and I simply can't take it anymore. She begins this section by making the point that it doesn't make sense that Paradox would have to do this off the books when referring to pruning the entire timeline. However, this does not make any sense. She says that you can't claim morality, even though we could definitely claim morality. It is stated in Loki that they stopped pruning universes for moral reasons. If he was going to do the thing that he was explicitly told not to do, he's going to have to do it off the books, and he's going to have to do it without getting caught as well. This falls completely in line with the lore of what we know about Deadpool and Wolverine, as well as what we know about Loki, which was set up immediately before. She also questions the function of anchor beings, which also doesn't make any sense, because she's making the argument that how is the universe surviving before that happened. It's actually quite simple. The reason why the universe is able to survive before this is simply due to the fact that it was created before. What I mean by that is that anchor beings don't actually always exist. They come into existence when a universe gets a being that is so epic and so amazing that the universe simply can't survive without it. Universes aren't naturally meant to die, at least in this in the MCU as we know it anyway. And there doesn't always need to be an anchor being. There's only an anchor being if there needs to be one based off of what we know about the series. It's completely arbitrary, yes, but that doesn't mean that they always need to have one. She also says that all of these universes are meant to die eventually anyway. Based off of what we know of the MCU, we don't know. We don't know how long it takes for a universe to die naturally. It could take, based off of our sheets, billions of years. Our universe is 13 billion years old. So if the loss of an anchor being causes the universe to decay in just a few thousand, that's actually a pretty fast turnover, because universes will naturally live billions of years. So this is just piss.
Centuries on end. Goodness, I really hate this timeline and time traveling shit. There's so much wrong with Deadpool and Wolverine that I genuinely believe EFAP wouldn't be able to unpack this in less than 10 hours, when utterly useless scenes like this exist.
Come on! I blew it. After all that, the only thing you're gonna remember is that god-awful dismount.
This isn't a movie meant to do anything more than be a product for you to consume. That may sound harsh, but let's be honest here. Once you peel away the fanfare of seeing Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds on screen together, the overly recycled humor, and cameos of characters that most people couldn't care about, you have nothing of substance left. Well, save for Wolverine. Deadpool and Wolverine is a film stitched together by skits that serves no larger narrative purpose, despite Disney's best efforts to try and get Deadpool and the X-Men into their MCU. Hugh Jackman may have delivered emotion when it asked, but it was for a character arc that had no emotional impact and stomped all over the pretty iconic send-off the character already had. If you're looking for a summer blockbuster, skip this and go see Twisters. That is a movie that actually knows what it is and gives audiences something more than member berries and a heartless desecration of several characters. Anyways, that's all I've got for you today. Thanks for stopping by and stay frosty.
Alright, I'm not going to cover that last part of the video because she's just sort of rehashing the same superficial things that she hates about the movie, and I don't have time for that at this point. But now it's time for reflection. In short, this video is ass. It completely misses the point of what Deadpool and Wolverine is, and all of the criticisms that the creator gives as to why the movie is bad don't actually matter, or they're just straight up wrong. I genuinely don't understand how someone could make a video that misses the mark this badly. This has to be one of the worst movie criticisms of a piece of media that I've ever seen, because it's very clear that the person reviewing just doesn't understand the source material. And so that is my ending segment for this video. However, I do want to just give a quick rehash on the Lord of the Rings thing. This video that I just made ended up being a lot longer than I expected it to be, and so it's going to take a little while to edit. I'm still going to set the same goal for the Lord of the Rings video, though. However, I'm not sure this video is going to get out at the time I want it to, because today is the 30th. Wait, no. That was wrong. Today is December 1st, on Sunday. Hopefully I'll be able to publish it by tonight, but this thing's like 40 minutes long at this point, so I don't know. I'll definitely release it eventually, though. Just maybe later than I would have liked. Because, I'm going to be honest, this video was pretty bad, the one I'm reviewing, and so it's going to take a while. It took as long as it was going to need to take in order to cover everything that was said. I personally don't believe in the philosophy of that you shouldn't be making a video on a piece of media that's longer than the length of media itself, because you can take longer to discuss why something is wrong or why something is right, and it might take longer than the actual piece itself. And so it takes me as long as it's going to take me, the same way it takes Mahler. And so, that's my ending piece. I love y'all. See you in the next one. Love you guys. Bye.